He's a popular loser. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. And gentlemen, the latest poll that I read about in the Washington Post on July 7th said, aided by a strong economy, this is the headline, Trump approval rises, but a majority see him as unpresidential. The upshot of the story is that despite the fact that Trump gets strong marks from voters across the board on what he's done with the economy, they don't like what he's done with anything else. And in fact, a majority of people plan to vote against him. Stephen Green, this would really fly in the face of traditional campaign logic, sort of instantiated and capsulized by what James Carville said to Bill Clinton, which is, it's the economy, stupid, meant to keep the president focused on the economy. It's almost as if the Washington Post poll is now suggesting that there is a new reality. And Steve, I'm reluctant to say there's not a new reality. And the reason for that is, in 3 words, President Donald Trump. So,
right?
How do we know that things haven't changed and that Trump can lose on the back of a strong economy?
Well, you know, it's like I said in the backstage, and I don't think I'm alone on this one. The Democrats have just gone so far off the deep end since Hillary lost that it doesn't matter who they nominate. Donald Trump could be caught in bed with the proverbial live boy or dead girl, and I would still crawl over broken glass to vote for him rather than whoever the Democrats end up nominating. It's just, it's the ugliness, the silliness, the craziness is only just beginning. We're still months away from Iowa, and they've already veered so far. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. But when President Trump, you know, he takes a lot of heat for saying that the Washington Post publishes fake news, but I don't know what else to call this. This is absolutely commissioning a poll for no reason other than to generate headlines and page clicks. You said during the backstage, is this correct, that it's a poll of American adults?
It looks like they did a mixture of things. Some of the questions they asked were specifically related to presidential preference.
But
yes, I know what you're saying.
Them of?
I understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying is I'm going into deeper detail than I did backstage.
Okay.
Some of the questions that they asked specifically in relation to how the president would do against various Democratic contenders, those were couched toward registered voters or likely voters. I think registered voters. But the American adults is that general conclusion. Yes, most people. Without going into the likely voters. But Steve, you know as well as I do, 18 months out or whatever it is, you don't know who the likely voters are anyway.
Well, exactly. And that means the poll is worthless. It's absolutely worthless. If you can't narrow it down to the people who are likely to show up on election day, then don't conduct the damn poll, period. This poll was conducted for one purpose only, and that was to generate page views and headlines for the Washington Post. Because if you can't figure out who the voters are, if you're talking to just anybody on the street, then you don't have data that is actionable. You don't have data that is worthwhile. You don't have data. What you have is a big smear of stuff that you paid a firm $100,000 or whatever to generate in order to get eyeballs on your newspaper. It's not news. It's fake.
So, Bill Whittle, assuming that Steve Green is right, and this isn't a predictor of electoral results, yes, and I hate to make that assumption, but let's just assume that Stephen Green is right, and you can't correlate this directly with any expected outcome in November of 2020. Nevertheless, shouldn't the Trump administration and the president himself, and frankly his campaign, be concerned about the fact that so many people think he's doing such a poor job on almost everything but the economy, and that even those who think he's doing a good job on the economy, many plan to vote against him? So that's kind of the negative. On the other hand, the Washington Post actually points out in the second paragraph, get this, the survey highlights the degree to which Trump has a narrow but real path to re-election. Roughly 1/5 of those who say he is not presidential approve of the job he is doing, and he trails decisively only against former Vice President Joe Biden. In other words, he's doing pretty well, and even the people who don't like him much are saying, hey, he's doing a pretty good job with the economy. How do you make sense of this?
His narrow path to re-election, is that what they said?
I've seen that phrase in several news stories, not just related to this. They are constantly saying, don't count the president out yet.
Oh, well, in that case, I suppose I might as well just go on and try and live a few more days, one day at a time. Um, Donald Trump's narrow path to the presidency occurred in 2016, and I remain absolutely unaware of two different things. I don't know a single person who voted for him anecdotally, a single person who voted for him in 2016 but will not vote for him in 2020. But I know lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people who couldn't vote for him in 2016 but who are going to vote for him in 2020. So he's going to pick up votes that he didn't have before. And then against this, you've got Hillary Clinton. It's true she was corrupt, but you had to be able to look for that information. That wasn't generally available. She came in with 30 years of momentum. And if you didn't actually get underneath the surface of all of the just the criminality and the corruption and the duplicity and all the rest of it, she seemed reasonable by external standards, I mean, she had 30 years of Clinton 90s kind of, credibility and stuff. They're not going to have somebody with that kind of momentum going into this race. Donald Trump has already maneuvered them into a world where the Democratic Party is spoken for by, Ocasio-Cortez and Omar. That's the Democratic Party. He's going to, unless something remarkably changes, he's going to win in a landslide. And I suspect that that these kind of things are done in order to keep the progressive base from jumping off a cliff. And the final thing that needs to be said about this, of course, is that when people make a decision to vote, they most often are deciding who they're going to vote against. And what this poll is saying is a lot of people are ready to vote against Donald Trump because in their mind, they're voting against Donald Trump and the person they're voting for is John Kennedy casually leaning against a column outside the White House, putting up an Instagram post while his wife Beyonce, strolls in the background at the middle of a fundraiser for transgendered athletes. That's who they think they're voting for instead of Donald Trump. Whenever you run against a generic opponent, it's like running against Superman. I actually think it's a sign of desperation. I really do. I think it's a sign that they are so worried about the rocks that they find themselves on that they just don't know what to do other than to say, oh, no, he's going down for sure. You are going to either get a nominee who is a radical or a nominee who is a centrist from the Democrats. And the bloodbath and the infighting that we had in 2016, that's not going to be there for the Republicans either. So I don't, again, you don't want to be cocky and 18 months away. There's so much that could go wrong. But with the economy doing well and the military stronger and the Supreme Court appointees and so on, and a Democratic Party that's going to either have to pick the crazies or the working people, one or the other, I just think things look absolutely grand right now.
Yeah,
grand.
Bill, can I throw something in real quick?
Sure.
It doesn't matter who the Democrats nominate. The Republicans have a built-in poster of every single one of them raising their hand to the question, do you want to provide free health coverage to illegal aliens? If that doesn't just cement Trump's base right there, I don't know what would.
And my right angle topic this week is exactly that what we were seeing more and more of is the Democratic position. Their platform for 2020 is America's a terrible place. Americans are terrible people. Vote for us so we can raise your taxes. And I don't think that is a winning formula, personally.
There's a reason why school teachers give tests to students. No, it's not to make you feel horrible about yourself. The purpose of the test is to evaluate whether what the teacher has been putting out for the last several weeks is being received and digested and understood in a way that could be reproduced. And in essence, is the message getting through? The reason why we see polls about presidential elections and issues political is not really because we're trying to figure out what the American public thinks or who's going to win the next election. The real question is the message that the Washington Post has been putting out getting through? Or is it being received? Is it being processed? Can it be recapitulated at a moment's notice? And so it's an interesting conflict of interest that I don't think the Columbia Journalism Review has probably ever dealt with in depth as it should, is whether it's even right for a mainstream media publisher to be polling on America's opinion on the issues that it is the source of. So, enough about me. What do you think about me? And that's the kind of thing you have to step back and look at a meta level and say, what is it really when we do a poll like this? Now, I'm not discounting the fact that the poll I'm not saying it wasn't run professionally. I'm not challenging the sample size or the margin of error, which was 3.5 points. I'm not trying to tear down the legitimacy of the poll itself. I'm just saying by its very nature, you are basically asking the American public to tell you whether what you're telling them is getting through to them. And that is where the Democrats are going to go amiss, because they're going to hear this poll and say, the president is vulnerable. The president is vulnerable on all the areas involving non-economic issues. The president is vulnerable to Joe Biden, and they're going to read this as being an accurate reflection upon what people think instead of just a reflection of what people are regurgitating that the Washington Post thinks. I fervently pray for this, as Bill would point out, that this is how the Democrats read this. Politicians are historically terrible at interpreting the future because they're always doing it in light of what's happened in the past. And at the same time, they don't seem to learn the lessons of the past. And the big lesson of the past for the 2016 election is that a guy that everybody thought was going to lose, that everybody thought was a joke, that everybody thought made so many gaffes that would take down any other politician, that is no possible way. I'm reading a book right now, or listening to a book on tape, called American Carnage, that's about that whole process, the presidential election. And all these people who now work for President Trump were desperately trying to keep him from getting the nomination. You misread that, my friends, and you had all the polling. It's possible that you may be misreading this now as well. I would say think about it, but I just don't think that's the way you operate. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.